Welcome to our weird world. I'm your host, John Henson, and we are in the middle of Serial Killer September. And this week is the 9th edition, first one we've done in a while, of the Serial Killer Sampler. And already going to be a better episode than it was last week. All right, I feel much more rested for this one. So it can't be any worse than last week. And maybe I'm being hard on myself. Maybe last week's episode was great. I don't know. It probably wasn't. Let's be honest. But whatever. As always, in the Serial Killer Sampler, I have 3 stories, 3 serial killers from history. And so this week we are looking at the stories of Lemuel Smith, Gennady Mikhasevich, and our first story will be of Richard Biegenwald.
Story time! Story time! Story time? Story time!
Dick Biegenwald was born on August 24th, 1940 in Staten Island, New York, where he was frequently beaten by his alcoholic father. Not surprising, because most serial killers, for some reason, most serial killers had alcoholic fathers. Let that sink in, all right? I don't know what that, I don't know, man. And like, a lot of people drink, all right? Like, I grew up actually believing that only like 10% of the country actually drank, because I don't know, I grew up in the 90s and just like, I guess alcohol culture wasn't super prevalent. Like, we had an Applebee's and we had like a Ruby Tuesday, Outback Steakhouse, and they all had bars in the middle. But like, as often as we went there, I feel like I never really saw people sitting at the bar. And even if I did, I didn't see them drinking, you know, or maybe I was just too young to realize what was going on. That's probably it. But I really didn't understand how much people drank until I got to college. And then I was like, oh no, I'm in the minority because I don't drink that much. So like, you know, a lot of people drink, and then there are just some people who can't handle it, and they're alcoholics, and then they beat their kids, and then those kids become serial killers is the pattern, I guess. So in response to his alcoholic father's beatings, Richard set the family home on fire when he was 5 years old, which earned him a trip to the Rockland County Psychiatric Center, which seems unfair, all right, because we know why he set his family's house on fire. It's because dad's an alcoholic and he's beating him. And so he's going to try to, I don't know, fix the problem somehow. But no, the kid's crazy. Okay. By the time he was 8, he was drinking and gambling, which then earned him electroshock therapy at Bellevue Hospital, which that's crazy, man. An 8-year-old drinking and gambling. Just I'm going to take the over at 4.5. That I am this many years old. Just give me another beer, teddy bear. Anyway, I don't know, that's the vision I have in my head. Following the electroshock therapy, he was sent to the state training school for boys, where he was accused of planning large-scale prison escapes. Which, yeah, I mean, any troubled teen or even troubled child who is sent to a school like that is going to plan an escape. They're all doing it. He's just the one that got caught. When Richard was 11, he set himself on fire while visiting his mother, which I don't know what she was doing, but all right. When he was 16, he dropped out of high school and moved to Nashville, Tennessee. 2 years later, he stole a car and then was arrested for that in Kentucky. Richard returned to Staten Island in 1958, where he stole another car and later robbed a grocery store in New Jersey. During this robbery, Richard shot and killed the store's owner, Stephen Sledowski, which was the first kind of murder. It was the first murder he committed. Although he fled the state, Richard was captured 2 days later in Maryland and given a life sentence. Now, apparently, a life sentence in New Jersey means something completely different, because Richard was released after 17 years for good behavior. Okay, see, and this is, so far I've been conflicted on old Dickie Biggs, right? Because very troubled childhood. And then he gets these electroshock therapies that probably scramble his brain even more. So he's just a terrible person, right? Career criminal, always getting into trouble, doesn't understand consequences, apparently, murders this guy, but then gets a life sentence. And that should be the end of the story. He should just be locked up forever, and that's it. Problem solved. But no, 17 years, and you let a murderer out on good behavior? I don't know about that. That's a little silly, but whatever. Over the next 3 years, Richard did positively contribute to society and stayed out of trouble. He was then arrested on suspicion of rape in 1980, but was subsequently released after the victim did not recognize him in a lineup. So I don't know if he actually committed that rape or if the police just brought in a bunch of known criminals and people with criminal backgrounds and put them in, lineups. I don't know how that works, honestly. I feel like I've always felt like the police lineup was just like a thing that people made up in movies and TV, but apparently it's real. And that would be crazy because I don't know how police pick out who to put in a lineup. Like, do they actually arrest the right person and then just pick random, 5 random dudes in the jail to join them in the police lineup? Or do they just go out and grab people off the street? Like, hey, we need you to participate in this police lineup real quick for this person who could, I don't know, identify you for a very serious crime. And if they do, oh, buddy, talk about unlucky days. Anyway, I don't know. I could probably just Google how it works, but I don't know. I like there to still be some mystery and wonder in my life. In 1983, after getting married, who's marrying this guy? Richard shot and killed 18-year-old Anna Olesevich after seeing her walking in Asbury Park and luring her into his car. After 2 other suspected murders, police surrounded Richard's home on January 22nd and lured him outside. After a quick arrest, police found a large cache of weapons, pipe bombs, rohypnol, a live puff adder, which is like a highly venomous snake, venom collecting tools, and floor plans of several area homes and businesses. Why? During questioning, Richard admitted to as many as 9 murders, many of whom were killed with his associate Darren Fitzgerald after he was released from prison the first time. Richard was eventually charged with 5 murders and given the death penalty, which was later commuted to 4 life sentences. And this time, he did actually stay in prison for the rest of his life, where he died on March 10th, 2008 of respiratory and kidney failure. But let's go back for a second. What are we doing with a live viper, which is what a puff adder is? It's a very highly venomous viper snake. And he's got venom collecting tools. So was he planning on just collecting this snake venom and then poisoning a bunch of people? Whoa, that would be crazy if that was how he was going to just keep murdering people. Anyway, I guess good thing that he didn't. Our next story here is of Gennady Mikhasevich, who was born on April 7th, 1947 in the Vitebsk Oblast, in what would later become the country of Belarus. After serving in the army, Gennady came home in 1971 and found that his girlfriend had decided to marry someone else without telling him, probably because she thought he was dead in a war somewhere. He initially planned on killing himself, especially after failing to catch the bus back to Polotsk, where his parents lived, which then forced him to walk the entire way. And yeah, I would probably want to kill myself too if I had to walk through the bleak Soviet countryside. Gross. Instead, he found a young woman walking along the same dark road and fell in love with her, and then the two got married, and that's the end of the story. No, of course not. He decided to kill her. Why else would he be in an episode on serial killers if he didn't kill this girl? Of course he killed this girl. Over the next few years, Gennady killed multiple women after raping them, of course, in a variety of ways. In between his rapes and murders, he graduated college in 1973 and even got married in 1976. Although he had finally found someone to love him, Gennady kept murdering, often robbing his victims and presenting their belongings as gifts to his new wife, who just thought he was out spending his extra money on her. Which, gotta love an oblivious lady. Just, there's always seems to be one in a lot of these stories where it's just like, oh, my husband loves me so much. He's just always coming home with the most perfect gifts. Just nice, jewelry, lingerie sets. Just imagine, because that's probably what happened. He probably just rifled through his victim's underwear. He's like, oh, I like this. I give to wife. And then he goes home and just gives his wife like used underwear. So gross. All of this worked very well too for Gennady because he carefully presented himself as this like teetotaling family man who also volunteered with the People's Druzhna, which was this volunteer militia group in Belarus, or basically Soviet Union at the time. By the 1980s, police had caught on to a lot of the disappearances and murders in the area and believed that they were all done by the same guy. They also believed that the murderer was using a red Zaporozhets, which is this Ukrainian car brand, and that is exactly what Gennady drove, which is crazy. I mean, I guess like a lot of witnesses reported seeing this same car, or seeing, the last time they saw the person alive was near this red car. But like crazy that they were able to, hone in on it like that. However, since Gennady was a member of the Druzhna who actively helped inspect the suspected vehicles in the area, he avoided suspicion because he was essentially helping authorities look for himself. So I love when that happens because we've seen that happen a couple of times in other stories where the serial killer will basically join the task force that was assigned to find himself. And would just, could easily just misdirect everyone away from his own suspicion so he can keep killing people. Even more, Gennady actually worked to get at least 14 other people arrested for crimes that he committed, some of whom were actually sentenced to death and executed because the Soviets just don't. We think you killed, we kill you, doesn't matter, trial, no evidence, we don't care. It's just like, that's crazy. At least 14 other people, a lot of them got executed for crimes that he committed. Because he was so closely involved in his own investigation, Gennady was able to remain one step ahead of authorities basically all the time. He used any new leads or any information that the task force was using to try to find him to kill as many as 12 people in 1985 alone. Not just overall, but just in 1 year. So in an effort to continue throwing police off the trail, he wrote an anonymous letter to the local newspaper claiming to be part of an underground organization that didn't actually exist called Patriots of Vitebsk. And in the letter, Gennady called for other members of the group to increase their attempts to kill communists and lewd women. And he then left another handwritten anonymous note from the Patriots of Vitebsk next to a recent murder victim. So basically, he's on this task force, and then he just starts cosplaying as this fake anti-communist, like, rebel group to, like, throw police off the scent even more. Like, he's really smart, and this is the way you murder people. But anyway, at that point, though, police began comparing handwriting samples on every male resident in the area, which I guess he did not think that they would come up with that idea. Experts quickly noted that the letters were shockingly similar to how Gennady wrote, which was enough to arrest him for the murders in December of 1985. Gennady eventually confessed and was executed by a firing squad less than 2 years later. In all, he definitely killed 33 people doing all of this nonsense, though it is possible that he ended up killing more than 50. Our final story here is of Lemuel Smith, who was born on July 23rd, 1941, to a very religious family in Amsterdam, New York. He claimed to have nearly smothered a 9-year-old girl to death when he was 11, but no one has really been able to identify or verify that. Instead, he was suspected of robbing and beating a woman to death in his neighborhood when he was 16. However, the district attorney actually messed up the case, and all of the charges ended up getting dropped, which is crazy. And then they just didn't bother to retry him or rearrest him on some other charge like that. You got to mess up real bad to have just the entire case dropped. I don't know how the family of this person he murdered was totally okay with that, but whatever. In 1959, while police continued to try to pin this murder on Smith, so they did continue. I forgot. Again, I don't study these stories beforehand. Smith relocated to Baltimore and nearly beat a woman to death. The only thing that saved her, though, was an intervening witness who basically wrestled Smith to the ground and turned him into the police. Although he was given a 20-year sentence for this attack, he was paroled after 10 years and moved up to Albany, New York. A year later, Smith kidnapped and raped 2 women, the latter of which was his mother's friend who actually had him arrested, which why are you going to kidnap and try to rape someone who knows you? That's real dumb. Although he was given a 15-year sentence for this, he spent the next 17 years in prison before being released on October 5th, 1976. So, you know what? Good job, New York, in this instance. I think Biegenwald was New Jersey, but whatever. But, like, put him in prison for 15 years, keep him for 17 because he's got a long track record. Just go ahead and start banking some years because you know he's going to be back. On November 24th, 1976, Robert Hederman and his secretary, Margaret Byron, were found murdered in the back of Hederman's Christian supply store. Police found human feces at the scene and immediately suspected Lemuel Smith of the murder because he was employed nearby, not because he was known as like this serial pooper. Like, how crazy would that be? I wish that was the truth in this story. Like, I wish that in all of his rapes and all of his attacks and everything, like, his signature was just like pooping on or near the victim. That would be such a crazy detail. But no, although, I mean, I guess he did poop next to these people in this store, but like, that was the only time he did it. A month later, while police continued investigating the murder, the Hederman's murder, 24-year-old Joan Richburg was raped and murdered in her car at a shopping mall. Because the style of murder and similar hair follicles were found at Richburg's murder, police suspected Lemuel Smith of this killing as well. As far as I could tell, there was no poop near her murder scene. 2 weeks later, Smith tried to kidnap a 60-year-old grandmother before help quickly came and, pulled her off of him or whatever. And since he couldn't kill her, Smith pushed the woman down and stomped on her hand before, getting pulled away. It broke her hand. Of course it would. On July 22nd, 1977, while Albany police were still trying to figure out everything that you already know, 30-year-old Mary Lee Wilson was found mutilated near a set of railroad tracks in Schenectady. A month later, Smith kidnapped and raped 18-year-old Mary Ann Maggio. Smith then forced her to drive him to Albany, where the car was pulled over by police. At that point, Smith cooperated with officers and went into custody. So, because DNA technology wasn't a thing yet, police sent Smith to a local stadium where dogs traced the smell of feces back to him on multiple occasions. It's crazy how that's how we tested back then. Just throw him out in the middle of a football stadium. Just go out to the local high school football stadium, and we're going to smear. We're going to get some of the poop that we've kept in the evidence locker all these months for some reason. Go let the dogs sniff it, and let them go find the butthole that came from. And the dogs were just like, hey, yep, it's this guy's butthole right here. Look, we'll do it again. Take us back. Give us another sniff. We're going to go find this same butthole. And they did. And that's how they connected him to these murders. At that point, Smith confessed to 5 murders and tried to convince investigators that he was insane. He claimed that he was controlled by the spirit of his dead brother, John Smith Jr., who had died from encephalitis as an infant before Smith was ever born. Although 2 different doctors confirmed Smith's delusion. So they were like, yeah, no, this guy really does believe that he's possessed by his little encephalitis brother, whatever. He was still found to be fit for trial and was given a life sentence for his rapes and murders. However, in 1981, Smith somehow found a way to murder corrections officer Donna Payant at the maximum security Greenhaven Correctional Facility where he was being held. She was the first female officer to be killed inside a prison, and over 5,000 officers attended her funeral. Because this murder received a ton of national publicity, as it should. How does an inmate kill a corrections officer, especially the first female officer? Probably because they were like, oh, this is why we don't let women in the prisons. Whatever. Smith was represented by lawyers C. Vernon Mason and William Kunstler. Now, William Kunstler, this is not the first time William Kunstler has showed up on this podcast. William Kunstler was also the defense lawyer for Colin Ferguson, and we covered Colin Ferguson's story back at episode 46 for our Black History Month celebration way back when we first started the show. And basically, Colin Ferguson was this dude who was basically like this mass shooter on the New York subway system, and he tried to claim that, I think he tried to claim that like white people were the devil, and he was like trying to kill, I don't know, it was some crazy stuff. And William Kunstler was like, yeah, this dude, he's totally innocent. Like, come on, don't this little poor black guy, he's definitely possessed or whatever. Anyway, these two piles of human scum, William Kunstler and C. Vernon Mason, actually tried to allege that Donna Pyant, this corrections officer, was having multiple affairs with all of the prisoners, not all of them, but several, in the maximum security prison, and deserved to be murdered, which is crazy. Like, that's, and I get, like, look, defense lawyer has to exist, right? Like, they have to try to make a convincing argument. And I don't hate that. What I hate are these defense lawyers who will then try to smear the other side with just some ridiculous nonsense. And that's what they did here. This woman got murdered. And they're like, yeah, but, you know, she was probably banging all those dudes. Like, she was a thicker white lady. You know how those thick white chicks love black dudes. She was probably banging all of them. And yeah, we are assuming that, you know, all of the prisoners in this prison were black, because duh. But like, so not only are we misogynist, we're also kind of racist, but that's fine. We're lawyers. You know? Anyway, I work with lawyers, and not all of them are bad. So Smith's lawyers, they try to, you know, say that this woman deserved to be murdered, which again, I don't know how that still makes it okay. It's like, oh, she was banging all these other prisoners, but then Lemuel killed her because she was banging other prisoners and not just him. Oh, okay, well, I guess he's innocent. Like, no. The problem, though, their own expert witness then agreed that the bite marks on Donna Pyant's body matched Smith's own bite pattern, which was his signature. Like, rather than his signature being that he poops on people, his signature was that he left bite marks on his victims. And so Smith was found guilty and was given the death penalty. Following an appeal, the sentence was commuted to life in prison, where he spent the next 20 years in near isolation. The most recent update came in, I think, December of 2022. Yeah, and he is still incarcerated at the Windy Correctional Facility near Buffalo. All right, serial killer sampler number 9 in the books. Let us recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, Dickie Biegenwald. Listen, if kids, grown up, if your father specifically becomes an abusive alcoholic, get out in front of that, because chances are you're going to become a serial killer, and you don't want to do that. That's not the life you want to live. So, I don't know. Don't try to burn your house down, for sure. That's bad. But I don't know. Just don't become a serial killer, I guess. Number 2, Gennady Mikhasevich got on the task force that was assigned to try to find himself as the murderer, and then he was able to just plant false leads and keep murdering people, and ended up killing like 33 some people. Maybe he's over 50, because he was having fun with it. And then number 3, Lemuel Smith, not a serial pooper, but did leave bite marks on his victims, and then his giant piles of human scum lawyers tried to make it seem like the corrections officer that he murdered deserved it, and it didn't work, because their own expert witness basically was like, yeah, no, he definitely murdered her on purpose. You guys are idiots. So, justice.
What did we learn?
Next week on the show, I was going to say next week on Serial Killer September, like that was the name of the show. It's not. But Serial Killer September does continue with the 10th edition of the Serial Killer Sampler, where we are going to look at the stories of Peter London, John Christie, and Samuel Little. One of those guys, the most prolific serial killer in United States history. Not necessarily the world, because there's some other ones out there did way more, but in United States history, the most prolific serial, and you probably never even heard of him. You may not have ever heard of any of those 3 names before, and yet one of them, most prolific serial killer in United States history. And there's a couple reasons why. Just not as famous as someone like Bundy or Dahmer or whatever. But we will cover that, and you'll kind of see why next week. So thank you for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends, and keep it weird.
This is a podcast